In 2026, the average lunch in London costs $24. In Hanoi, Vietnam, the exact same quality meal costs $1.20. Every day, people around the world wake up, open their banking app, and quietly cancel a trip they've been dreaming about for years. Not because they don't have the time, not because they're not brave enough, but because they've been told that travel is expensive. What if I told you that belief, that deeply held, almost universally accepted belief, is only true for about 30% of the planet? In 2006, there are countries where $50 a day doesn't just cover your needs. It covers a private room with a mountain view, 3 meals at restaurants locals actually eat at, a guided experience most tourists pay triple for, and still leaves money in your pocket for tomorrow. But here's the question nobody in the travel industry wants to answer honestly. Why are these countries so cheap? Cheap for whom, and how long will it last? I'm going to take you inside 5 of the cheapest countries on Earth right now. Not just to tell you the prices, but to explain the economics, the history, and the uncomfortable truth behind why your money goes so far there. And at the end, I'm going to ask you a question that might change the way you travel forever. Let's start at the very bottom of the price ladder. A country where you can spend 3 weeks trekking some of the most dramatic landscapes on Earth and come home having spent less than a single weekend in a mid-range European city. Why is Nepal cheap? Nepal's affordability comes down to 3 interconnected realities. First, the Nepalese rupee is structurally weak against major global currencies. $1 buys roughly 135 rupees. 1 British pound buys nearly 170. That gap alone does most of the work. Second, Nepal's economy is heavily reliant on subsistence agriculture and remittances sent home by Nepalese working abroad. The local cost of living has evolved around local wages, not tourist wallets. A Nepali porter earns the equivalent of $15 to $20 a day. A tea house meal is priced for him, not for you. Third, Nepal's government has deliberately kept trekking infrastructure affordable as a tourism strategy. The Annapurna Circuit permit costs $18. The Langtang trekking permit is $30 for 7 days. These are political decisions, conscious choices to keep adventure accessible, to attract volume over luxury. Cheap for whom? Nepal is cheapest for travelers holding US dollars, British pounds, euros, UAE dirhams, or any currency from a high GDP economy. For a Kenyan traveler, the KES to NPR rate still provides meaningful purchasing power, better than most African currencies would get you in Europe. For a South Asian traveler from India, the gap is smaller, but still present. But here's the part that makes you pause. The average Nepali earns around $1,300 per year. When you spend your $25 day budget casually, comfortably, you've spent the equivalent of what many locals earn in a week. The affordability you enjoy is literally built on that wage gap. How long will it last? The honest answer? Probably a long time. But with cracks forming, Kathmandu is gentrifying fast, driven by diaspora returnees and international NGOs inflating rental prices. Popular trekking routes are seeing commercial pressure, and Nepal's government is now debating luxury tier permits to restrict overcrowding near Everest. The cheap Nepal of 2026 will likely still exist in 2030, but the sweet spots will require more research to find. From the mountains to the coast, Vietnam is the country that has, more than almost anywhere else, mastered the art of giving travelers maximum experience for minimum spend. It is, without exaggeration, one of the best value countries on Earth in 2026. Why is Vietnam cheap? Vietnam's economy has grown explosively in the last 2 decades, averaging 6 to 7% GDP growth per year. But here's the paradox. That growth hasn't translated into tourist price inflation at the speed you'd expect. Why? Because Vietnam's domestic consumption is what's driving growth. Tourism is a side dish, not the main course. That means pricing hasn't chased the tourist dollar the way Thailand's island resorts have. The Vietnamese dong is also deliberately managed by the State Bank of Vietnam to stay competitive for exports. $1 currently buys around 25,000 VND. That's not a typo. 25,000. The psychological effect of holding millions in local currency, even if it's technically just $40, is part of why Vietnam feels so cheap. And the street food culture. It's not just cheap because it's basic. It's cheap because it's the primary eating culture of 98 million people. When a bowl of bun bo hue is the standard lunch for a Vietnamese office worker, it cannot be expensive. You benefit from an entire culinary economy that was never designed around you. Cheap for whom? Extremely cheap for Western and Gulf country travelers, moderately affordable for East African travelers. The KES to VND exchange is workable, though Nairobi to Hanoi flights add significant cost. For intra-Asian travelers from Japan, South Korea, or Singapore, Vietnam is a very popular weekend trip destination. The flight is short and the value is obvious. How long will it last? This is where Vietnam gets interesting. There are early signs of what I'd call the Bali effect, the slow creep of tourism pricing in hotspots. Hoi An's ancient town restaurants now charge tourist menus. Phu Quoc Island has been colonized by luxury resorts. But venture one step off the tourist trail to places like Ha Giang in the north or Quai Ninh Han on the coast, and the original Vietnam at original prices is still very much alive. In 2026, Vietnam rewards the slightly curious traveler significantly more than the passive one. Now we leave Asia entirely and head to South America, specifically to the country that, despite being landlocked and economically troubled, offers some of the most visually arresting experiences on the planet, for less money than you'd imagine. Why is Bolivia cheap? Bolivia is, by GDP per capita, one of the poorest countries in South America. The Boliviano has remained relatively stable, but it's priced against an economy where the average monthly wage sits around $350. When your country's economy is built around that number, everything, food, transport, lodging, tours, is priced to match. Bolivia also has a long history of state subsidies on fuel and basic goods. Bus rides that would cost $40 in neighboring countries cost $8 in Bolivia. Local market meals are under $2. The government has, for political reasons, kept the cost of basic living artificially low, and travelers accidentally benefit from that. The Salar de Uyuni Salt Flat Tour, arguably one of the world's most spectacular natural experiences, costs $35 to $60 for a 3-day guided trip, including accommodation and meals. In any other country, with that level of visual drama, you'd be looking at $300 minimum. Cheap for whom? Bolivia is cheapest for North American and European travelers. The USD to BOB rate is highly favorable. For Kenyan travelers, the challenge is the flight. There are no direct routes from Nairobi to Bolivia, meaning connections through Addis Ababa or European hubs, adding $800 to $1,200 in airfare. Once you're there, your money goes very far. The question is whether the flights make it worth it compared to closer, cheap destinations. How long will it last? Bolivia's affordability is tied to its economy remaining underdeveloped, which is a deeply uncomfortable thing to say out loud. If Bolivia's economy grows and wages rise, prices will follow. There are also growing signs of tourism inflation, specifically around the salt flats. as tour operators have noticed the demand. But Bolivia remains one of the least visited countries in South America, which is both its greatest charm and its greatest protection from tourist pricing. Thailand is the destination that introduced an entire generation to budget travel. It is the country that created the backpacker economy as we know it. And in 2026, despite decades of tourism growth, it remains extraordinary value, if you know where to look. Why is Thailand cheap? Thailand's affordability is the product of a deliberate national tourism strategy stretching back to the 1970s. The government saw tourism as an economic engine and built infrastructure designed to attract volume. Millions of visitors, all spending. That meant keeping base-level prices accessible, building a hostile ecosystem, enabling street food culture, and maintaining competitive transport. The Thai baht is a mid-tier currency, stronger than Vietnam's dong, but still highly favorable for Western visitors. $1 buys around 35 baht in 2026. That means a solid guest house room runs $10 to $20. A full meal, $1 to $3, and a long-distance sleeper train across the country costs $15. Thailand has also mastered tiered tourism pricing. Luxury travelers pay luxury prices in beach clubs and five-star resorts. Budget travelers pay budget prices in guest houses and at street carts. Both economies coexist without destroying each other, which is genuinely unusual and worth studying. Cheap for whom? Thailand is cheap for almost everyone, with a currency stronger than the Thai baht, which covers most of the world's higher income populations. For East African travelers, Thailand is one of the better connected cheap destinations, with Ethiopian Airlines and Kenya Airways offering relatively affordable connections. The KES to THB rate provides reasonable purchasing power once you arrive. How long will it last? This is where Thailand's story gets complicated. Popular islands like Koh Samui have already crossed into mid-range territory. Chiang Mai, once the world's cheapest digital nomad city, has seen rents double in 5 years due to the remote worker influx. The Thailand that was uniformly cheap no longer exists. But the Thailand that is strategically cheap, if you choose Koh Chang over Koh Samui or Pai over Chiang Mai, absolutely still does. Thailand in 2026 is cheap by choice, not by default. Our fifth country is the most expensive on this list. At $40 to $60 per day, it stretches the definition of cheap. But Colombia earns its place here for one specific reason. It offers a level of urban sophistication, cultural richness, and natural diversity that anywhere else in the world with this quality would cost you twice as much. Colombia is not cheap. Colombia is extraordinary value, which is a different and more interesting thing. Why is Colombia cheap? Colombia's affordability is partly economic. The Colombian peso has weakened significantly against the US dollar since 2020, meaning your foreign currency buys dramatically more than it did 5 years ago. But it's also partly reputational. Colombia spent decades associated in the global imagination with conflict and danger. That reputation, largely outdated, kept mass tourism away long enough for a genuine local economy to develop without tourist inflation baking in from the start. Medellin is now regularly cited as one of the world's most innovative cities. It has world-class restaurants, a metro system, a thriving arts scene, and a startup ecosystem. And yet a meal in a quality local restaurant costs $6 to $8. A craft beer is $2. An Airbnb in a great neighborhood runs $25 to $35 a night. The gap between quality and cost is startling. Cheap for whom? Colombia is particularly cheap for Americans, Canadians, and Europeans. The USD to COP rate is currently very favorable. For Kenyan travelers, the long-haul flight makes it more of an investment, but the on-the-ground costs are genuinely low. Colombia is also increasingly popular with travelers from other Latin American countries who benefit from regional flight connectivity. How long will it last? Colombia is the country on this list most likely to move out of the budget category within 5 years. Digital nomads have discovered Medellin with a vengeance. Neighborhoods like El Poblado and Laureles now have noticeably higher rents than 3 years ago. Cartagena's tourist zone already prices like a mid-tier European beach city. But Colombia is a large and diverse country. Smaller cities like Manizales, Santa Marta, and Salento offer the same quality for significantly less. The smart traveler diversifies. So, 5 countries, 5 different reasons they're cheap, but if you've been paying attention, you've noticed a thread running through all of them. Every single one of these countries is cheap because, in one way or another, its people earn significantly less than you do. The currency is weak because the economy is developing. The food is cheap because local wages are low. The tours are affordable because the guides need the business. Now, I'm not saying don't go. Quite the opposite. Tourism, done thoughtfully, is one of the most powerful tools for economic distribution on the planet. When you eat at a local restaurant instead of a foreign-owned resort, you put money directly into a local family's hands. When you hire a local guide, instead of booking through a multinational platform, that income stays in the community. But here's what I want you to think about. There is a version of budget travel that haggles down a vendor's price by 50 cents, not because you need to, but because you can. That stays exclusively in foreign-owned hostels optimized for Western comfort. That treats a country's poverty as a backdrop for your adventure. And there is a version of budget travel that gives back. That tips generously because your $2 tip is, to your guide, meaningful money. That eats where locals eat. That stays in family-run guest houses. That asks, before bargaining, whether the price is already fair. The 5 countries on this list are cheap. The question is, what kind of cheap traveler will you be? If this video made you think differently about budget travel, about the why behind the price, hit the subscribe button. Because that's exactly the kind of travel content we make here. Not just where to go, but why it matters. And leave a comment below. Which of these 5 countries are you most drawn to, and why? I read every single one.